take it now?
Yeah, no, I got it. So you can have it back. It's fine.
Oh, we're at Kyola.
Yay! We're at Kyola.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm so glad you guys got your wine. There was a panic because you both of you were out today.
Yeah, we're now working.
Yeah, I know. How annoying is that? You've actually got to go somewhere. It's terrible.
I just realised I've got the Zoom picture as our beach house on the south coast of New South Wales.
Mate, how
I know.
amazing is that?
It's like torture.
That is so cool. Which beach is that?
It's Kyola Beach, right near just south of Ulladulla, north of.
Oh, I know exactly where that is. Yeah. In
I
fact,
took that photo a year and a half ago.
Lou's actually just bought something down there. I'm sure yes, he has. Down in near I think it's very close to Ulladulla, some new development things.
Lou has he?
Yeah. He mentioned it just the other day. I think it's still being built. But,
well, I'll have to, because we were there when we could travel, we're there.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is torturing me seeing that, so I'm even going to take it off.
How gorgeous is that? It's amazing. And so how close is the beach to the house? Can you walk there?
Yeah. So we're in a national park, so you walk.
Oh shit, that's amazing.
Walk out of our house, turn right through the forest and onto that beach. So it's actually a national park.
So no one's going to build a KFC in front of you anytime soon, then.
No. and the fact that we've got pump out sewerage, water tanks, and places are going for over $1 million. That's just how crazy the property market in Australia is right now.
So crazy. A lucky country for that, for sure. I mean, I can't believe what's going on there.
Yeah.
Hello, Jason Fuller.
Hi, guys. How are you?
You know Jason?
I do
No,
know.
no.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yes.
Kristen Dooley.
Oh, my God. I just looked at the last name and you said, I do know you. I was like, oh, where, you're back home?
Yeah. No.
I had no.
No, home is in Singapore. That's just their background.
You are in Singapore. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll go back to.
Sorry. Oh my God, that was you just totally surprised me, caught me right out there. I had no idea that you were going to be on the call. It's fantastic. Oh, Grant, hello, Jason here.
So, guys, the Dooleys, that delivery process, was that okay for you moving forward now that you're back in the working?
I just dropped to the back door.
Okay, cool. Because concierge didn't want to go near it, and I know the property because I was pretty sure it was going to be safe, but I just wanted to.
Yeah. She tried. Problem is, she was trying to ring me, but I was on a call, so I couldn't pick up the phone.
Got it. Yeah, I know. We're back to pre-coronavirus now, where deliveries are becoming steadily a problem. With people working again. But yeah. So, Grant, what are you hearing about travel back to Oz? Have you heard anything that I haven't heard?
Well, Kristen's the one that works for the High Commission. So.
Yeah, come on, Chris, give us the goods. What's going on?
I think there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes. I think Singapore would like a travel bubble yesterday. So and I think there's a pretty active expat community that's communicating their desire to
quite actively.
Well, so but there's no guarantees. I don't think people in Australia realise what it's like living outside of Australia.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
Yeah. And I saw on Russia's today that there's a bunch of Australians in Moscow that have gone to the United Nations because you won't let them back into Australia.
Mm.
Yeah.
There's like some litigation going on. It's really extraordinary.
Yeah.
That apparently they simply can't get in.
Just to confirm just how bizarre this whole world is, I was just watching the AFL before, and there was 50,000 people at Marvel Stadium watching the football live. Where else in the world do you get 50,000 people? That's crazy. It's totally crazy. But not far from where you are, our master winemaker up there in Yarra Valley, I would have thought. But,
yeah, not far from us. We did the hard yards last year, so they could go to the football. I have no desire to go to the football, but, hopefully my team, when my footy tipping based on jumper colour, will win. I don't even know who's playing tonight. Garrick's in the lead on the footy tip, so...
Well, Lou's a massive fan, but it seems like the whole 12 years that I've known him, his team's never won.
Bullshit.
Always moaning about that.
What's wrong with you?
Who do you go for, Lou? Carlton?
No, I'm a Geelong fan. Thank you very much.
I picked Geelong this week.
We were all over Geelong. We're sick of Geelong.
Is it Geelong got North Melbourne, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
There you go. Might be a safe bet for Geelong this week.
I bet Geelong.
Yeah.
I'm
all very happy for you.
Well, now that we've got the football out of the way, I'd like to welcome Meg and Gareth most sincerely for joining us from Rob Dolan tonight. I'm so looking forward to sitting back and seeing what Meg has got to say about the winery and to walk through the wines with us. But I'm going to hand over to Garrick first, just to give us the ground rules, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, Rob, and thanks to you and Lou for hosting us. I guess it's probably a nice segue from football into wine, but those of you who don't know, Rob Dolan, started his career and his life at Port Adelaide, having won 2 premierships in the SA Football League down there, and has gone on today to be a big supporter. Unfortunately, he's midway through the tipping table this time, Meg? I don't know.
He's doing really badly. Yeah.
I hope he loses on the weekend, is all I can say. As a Carlton man.
Up against Carlton. I think actually I'm with you, Grant. I think I did pick Carlton, and I probably won't tell Rob that. But I remember I called Rob week 1 to get his tips, and he gave me a few, and I haven't called him since because he was a great footballer. I don't know he's a great tipper, but moving on, guys. Yeah, thank you for joining us. As Rob said, my name's Garrick. I look after exports for Rob Dolan. We've put together a little presentation, but Meg's going to run through most of the wines and take everyone through, obviously, the wines and what we do. But we want this to be, we've put together a presentation. We don't want this to be death by PowerPoint. We just want to show you a little bit. We can share the PowerPoint later, but please, any questions, just fire them away. But we appreciate your time in joining us, and we hope you enjoy the wine. So really quick, I'm going to share my screen and jump into the deck. But for us, can everyone see that okay? Rob, we're good?
Yep.
So for us, look, we're a family business. Everything we do is about the wine. But, when you meet Rob, this will flow through. Rob's personality flows through all the characters within our business and certainly our wine. So our motto is just, it's about the wine, the people and the character. And the character starting with Rob. We're very lucky to be a 5-star rated James Halliday winery. And in 2014, we were rated his Newcomer Winery of the Year. So we're a 12-year-old winery, but already with some great accolades behind us. Obviously, we're from the Yarra Valley. Oh, let me just get going. And as I mentioned, Rob started out, he's been in the industry for 25 years, but started out in playing football for Port Adelaide. A little bit about us. So we're opened in 2011. We're in the Yarra. Everything we do is about the Yarra. We also do a sparkling wine where we lean on some wines from Yea Valley, just outside the Yarra Valley. But today we're considered, top 2, probably the second biggest producer in the Yarra Valley after De Bortley. Highly awarded, as we can see. And for those of you that haven't heard of Rob Dolan, you may have heard of Sticks or Punt Road. They were some brands that Rob started way back when. We also considered one of the leaders in education and training, and we're very lucky to have Meg as our in-house. What is your title? Our global
Education
outreach.
And Global Outreach. I made it up myself.
Perfect.
It means everything and nothing at all.
But I think, so Meg, I'll introduce a little bit more later, but Meg's Australia's first female master of wine. And, again, true to the motto that we touched on earlier, everything's about the people. And I love interacting with Meg because there's no wankiness about wine. We're all talking on a level and we can just talk and enjoy wine, which is the way wine should be, rather than, being mystified. And I've fallen asleep with a few other masters of wine, and Meg's certainly not that. I haven't slept with them. I've fallen asleep.
I was about to interject. Jeez, the lengths you go to be educated.
So for us, those of you who don't know, Melbourne, we'll touch on a little map and Australia, Melbourne, and then show you the Yarra. But we're in South Warrandyte, so we're considered the doorway, if you like, and the first winery on the road to the Yarra Valley. So about 30 minutes drive from Melbourne. little snapshot there, which Meg will pick up later, but just to show you there, Australia, Victoria, and then into the regional map there. A little bit about who we are, as I said, all about the relationships. We actually have 2 wineries, so one in Geelong, which is more a storage facility, and then one in the Yarra Valley, which is at Warrandyte, where we also have our cellar door, and that's where all the magic happens. I was, Meg, you'll probably laugh at me, but I was in one of these tanks yesterday shoveling out a lot of must and getting dirty, and again, it's a great family business, and great that everyone sort of rolls up the sleeves and gets into it together. So that's a snapshot there of our winery in action. And then a little bit about our range. We're starting today, we'll try one of the True Colours wines. Where I've got the prices here is just Australian retail, just for context. So our True Colours, we move up to our black label. So that's our more, I guess, experimental range. We move up to our white label. So we're going to try a few of the white label wines tonight. And then we move up to our Signature Series. Signature Series, handmade, only in the best years, only do about 2,000 bottles per year. And really highly awarded wines all the way through. I mentioned Meg, so without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Meg and to Meg to take us through. And guys, please shout out with any questions. And again, thanks for joining us, and we're hoping you're going to enjoy the wines.
Hi, I'm sure it's nice and warm where you are. We've got both fires going. Typical Melbourne weather. Poor Garrick was in his shorts digging out the tanks. So, yeah, if you've got any questions during this whole thing, just interrupt me and I'll endeavour to answer them. So we are in the Yarra Valley. For those of you who don't know where the Yarra Valley is, we're 45 k's from northeast of Melbourne. We're in really ancient soils. So we were the Lower Yarra, which is the part around Lilydale, Yarra Glen and Hillsville, if you put the map on the right, is... was an inland sea 450 million years ago. So we have these incredibly poor soils. Just to put it into context, Burgundy soils are about 230 million years old. And this means that the vines basically just have to work a little bit harder. It's like, I liken it to being pregnant with a baby. If you've only got a limited amount of food, you're not going to put all that energy into growing hair and your nails. You're going to put all your energy into growing your babies. And that's what these really poor soils do. So, you know, people laugh at the Yarra Valley sometimes and think, oh, how can they grow grapes out there? Because it is quite marginal. But because we have these soils and the vines struggle, they're putting their energy into the grapes and ripening them rather than into growing lots of leaves and shoots. So the Yarra is divided into 2 general parts, informed by soil and by altitude. So I talked about the Lower Yarra with these 450 million year old soils. As we move up towards where Garrick's got his little arrow to Warburton and Yarra Junction and Seville, this is known as the Upper Yarra, and it's called the Upper Yarra even though it is more southerly, because it's at altitude. So we run up to about 430 metres, and anything over about 500 metres, you start dropping at about 0.5 degrees Celsius. So it is cooler, longer ripening, and really better for Pinot and Chardonnay. There's not much else out there that will ripen properly in marginal years. And the soil here is a very deep red volcanic soils. This was from a volcanic eruption 230 million years ago, and that kind of made the ranges. So this shows the 3 prominent soil types that we have. The bottom 2 are probably the most common. The one in the middle is this red fertile volcanic soil in the Upper Yarra, and then the other one is these grey loams, they're called. It's just a mix of clay and sand, really, but really shallow. So you can put a spade in and you will dig about 2 centimetres down. Whereas in the Upper Yarra, because they are so rich and they're so young, they're very deep. You could go down 30 centimetres quite easily. The one at the top is a soil where we get some of our big reds from. So this is from an area called Kangaroo Ground. So this is a black basalt soil. And because it's dark, it absorbs the heat during the day and reflects it during the night. And that's why we can ripen the bigger reds, the Shirazes and the Cabernets, on these quite cool elevated sites because of the heat coming out of the soils. Next slide. So as you may or may not know, we're a cool climate region. What does that mean? It means that the MJT, which is the mean January temperature, it's supposed to be the warmest month of the year, is around 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. And this is just one of these climatic indices that we use, a little bit geeky and nerdy, but it tells you, you can work out what you should plant. There's all this analysis done of what you can plant according to, you know, your MJTs. Our rainfall is 750 to 950 millimetres. We capture a lot of that in dams so that we can irrigate, but most of it falls during autumn, winter and early spring. So our soils are filled with water by the time the harvest comes around, so that the plants are actually taking the water out of the soil. So we try and keep irrigation to a minimum because, as you know, in Australia, water is more expensive than wine. It's one of our, you know, most scarce resources, and we have to really limit the use of it. So we don't irrigate unless we absolutely have to. Unfortunately, I'm talking to you at the end of a 2021 vintage, which has just been an absolute cracker of a year where we've had a lot of rain, but at the right time. One of the keys to us being able to grow grapes is we have these long autumns. If any of you have been to Melbourne, March and April, even though they won't be hot, they will be mild temperatures. So you'll have anywhere between 20 and 25 degrees Celsius, and that'll go on usually till mid to late April. It does tend to get cooler at night, but that's okay because the plant's dormant, you know, at night anyway. So it's only during the day that we need the energy of the sun. Next one, because we want to talk about one. So these are just some of our vineyards. One of the key differences with Rob Dolan Wines is Rob started in the Yarra in '92 when the Yarra was really tiny. And over the years, he's built up these relationships with contract growers. So we have our own, we have 3 vineyards of our own, which is the Bodo Crago, Rob Dolan, and there's another small one on our site. But we contract buy, we have long-term relationships, and we have our full-time viticulturalist who manages our vineyards for us, growing the fruit to what style we want to achieve. So Murrumong on the top left is in the Lower Yarra, and we're getting some Arnace off there, and the Pinot Gris that you're going to be trying tonight is from there. And then the photograph on the right is Willow Lake, and this is probably one of the best vineyards. Well, no, it is the best vineyard in the Yarra Valley. A lot of people take fruit from here. Some of them put the name on their label saying it's from Willow Lake because it has such kudos now. We don't tend to do that, but we get first pick out of this vineyard because Rob's been with them since they were growing Cabernet and Sauvignon, which were not varieties they should have been growing, and he's sort of stayed with them over the years to get the best of the fruit. Okay, next one. Yeah, just top varieties in the Yarra. So Pinot Noir, obviously 36%, Chardonnay 33%, and then Shiraz on the increase, Cool Climate Shiraz, followed by Cabernet Sauvignon and Pinot Grigio. Cabernet is what the Yarra was built its back on, and most of you will know, if you know anything about the Yarra, you'll know Yeringberg, Yarra Yering, Mount Mary, all built on the back of Cabernet, not known for their Pinots and Chardonnays. But we've seen a resurgence in the 90s to these more early ripening varieties, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and I think they are better suited. There's some great sites for Cabernet, but it's very, very site specific. Next one. That's us. Yeah, Young Crew. Rob loves having a Young Crew. And tomorrow night, we've actually sponsored the Young Achievers Awards, the Channel 7 Young Achievers Awards, because Rob's really passionate about, you know, give it a red hot go is what he says all the time. Okay. So let's taste. The first one we've got tonight is the White Label Pinot Gris. And the first thing you'll notice about this one, I'm just opening it up now, is the fact that it is pink. This wine, the reason it is pink, I don't know if you know, Pinot Gris is a pink variety. It's not a white grape variety, so its skin is actually pink. So if you keep the juice in contact with the skins, it will extract some of that colour, and at the same time, it's extracting some of this phenolic material. So phenolics are just little baby tannins. They're sort of the building blocks of tannins, and that gives you some of that grip and texture that you have in the wine. We wanted to make quite a rich, lush style, but we wanted it to be dry, so which means that there's no residual sugar in it. But you'll feel that it's really mouth-filling and quite rich. That comes about because of the skin contact. We also do a little bit of what's called lees stirring. So when the fermentation finishes, the yeast dies. And if you keep the wine in contact with the lees, they'll burst open and they release a number of proteins into the wine. And that sort of gives you some of that oily texture that we love with Brie. As I said, most of this fruit is from Marramong, with a little bit out of Killara Estate up in the Upper Yarra. We also do a small amount in barrel, again, for texture. I like to say with Rob Dolan wines, particularly in the true colours, but also some of our whites in the white label, that we use the oak as a skeleton that we hang our fruit on, with not the other way around. We don't sort of cloak our fruit in oak. We sort of cloak the oak in our fruit. We want it to be structured. We want it to have a really lingering palate and to fill your palate, but without having that really evident oak. Because the beauty about Pinot Gris is it's all about fresh fruit. You know, I call this our orchard wine.
Meg, just one question on that. Do you find that the exposure to the skin crush derogates to a certain degree from the aromatic component of the Gris? Does it maybe influence that to any degree?
It does add to it, because some of the flavour components for whites are actually in the skins.
Mm.
So the more you have skin contact, they're connected to sugars where they're in the skins. So during the fermentation, they come off the sugars, and so they become available to add to the aroma and flavour profile of the wine.
Okay.
Yep. So this is all about, I call it the orchard wine. It's pear and apple, red apple, yellow apple, you know, lots of beautiful citrus fruit and this floralness as well, but you feel that texture. And key for us in all of our wines from the Yarra Valley is that very bright, quite racy acidity. We want you to salivate. We want you to have another glass. We want you to eat with this wine because they're really suited. They're food-friendly styles. Does anyone have any questions on that wine?
It's really interesting to taste this interpretation of the Gris in relation to how the Italians and the French approach this varietal. It's definitely something, to my exposure anyway, a completely unique approach to the varietal, which I guess would distinguish it significantly. I mean, 93 points from Halliday. I can see why this is probably a very fast seller at your cellar door.
Yeah, I mean, it is 3-1. It's our biggest seller in cellar door.
Yeah.
And a few years back, probably going back about 8-ish years, anything that had colour in it was being really caned in wine shows. We were just judging them and saying, oh, it's got colour, it's got to be sweet.
Yeah.
But then slowly but surely, people changed the styles and moved. They wanted the phenolics and the colour, but they wanted the wine to be dry and fresh and clean. So they're making really dry wines. This came about as a complete accident. My husband actually worked with Rob when he first started up, and they bought this fruit and they'd machine harvested it. And by the time it arrived at the winery, it was pink. And they kind of stood around and went, oh, what are we going to do? Because to get rid of that colour, you really are going to damage the aromatics of the wine. So they just left it, and it became such a success that, you know, this is the thing about winemaking. It's the same as Dom Perignon making his champagne. You know, someone obviously left some residual sugar in the wine. It started to form bubbles, and suddenly he's seeing stars. Well, you know, they stuffed up by leaving the fruit in the bins too long.
Yeah.
We now hand harvest the fruit so that we have no skin contact before we are in control of skin contact. So it gets de-stemmed and crushed at the winery and then held into the press so that, we've got a little bit more control over it.
I can see that could be a bit of a winner for our database, just from the point of view of the different approach to it. And the thing that I really love is that peach, that stone fruit aspect to the wine, which just speaks to so many different food options. I think it's really good.
Yeah. I just have a question from Lou here saying, when was the Yarra first planted? The Yarra was actually first planted in 1838 by a group of Swiss immigrants, and then they were making table wine, and then the Australian palate during the 1920s moved to fortified wine. They wanted obviously more bang for their buck clearly styles that we couldn't do in the Yarra. So it was turned over to dairy. And then in the 60s, we saw a resurgence of plantings with Bailey Caritas at Yarra Yering, with Mount Mary, with Wanturna Estate and Yeringberg. So then there was a change in the 90s to Pinot and Chardonnay.
Derek's also asking about, would this be defined as a rosé? And is there a limit to the amount of skin contacts you go through? Yeah, Derek, I think it's 12 months. Hang on. I'll leave it to you to answer me.
I agree.
So this is 12 hours on skins.
12 hours,
yeah, what we do is we constantly taste it. So we taste the juice in the press tray to make sure that we've got the that we want. So yes, you could go too much. It would become quite bitter. It may start to oxidize and go brown. So you definitely can go too much. This isn't considered a rosé because Pinot Gris is, even though it is a grey grape variety, is considered a white grape variety. Rosé is made only from red grape varieties. So that's the difference. And that's why rosé tastes like red fruit, whereas this is definitely white fruit character. Why Pinot Gris, not Pinot Grigio? One's in France, one's in Italy. It's exactly the same grape variety, but in Italy, they tend to grow a lot of it in the Veneto, really high yields, quite a lot of water, and it's a much lighter style. And one thing about Italian winemaking is they love filtration. So they often filter it so it's almost water white in colour. And you're left with that sort of lemon pear drop characteristic as opposed to this more lush style. We're sort of, you know, I hate comparing our wines to French wines, but we're channeling more of an Alsatian Pinot Gris. We want texture, we want richness, and a little bit of fun with the colour.
It's and thanks for explaining that, because it is actually, we were talking about on it before, but it's actually quite a lush. I find it quite a velvety nearly, you know, Pinot Gris. It's you know, unlike some of those, maybe it's the Pinot Grigio you're talking about, but have more of the upfront citrusy type sharpness. So it is quite a lush, quite a lush wine. Yep.
Pinot Grigio, generally, rule of thumb, there's always exceptions, but tends to be what I call a linear wine. So it kind of just goes straight down the middle of your palate, like a straight line, whereas this Pinot Gris style tends to fill out your palate and make it look a bit bigger and rounder. Yeah. I mean, they're both really good styles.
Well, that was the question. I was like, because I know that the difference is French and Italian, but I was wondering why you chose this particular, and it's to do with the way that the method and the style of the wine that you're making.
Yeah, because of the stuff up. I've got to be careful. My husband's here, so I don't want you stuff the wine, Pete. No, they laugh about it now. They laugh about it now. Yeah, I think, and another reason is that we're all about food at Rob Dolman Wines. You know, all of us, we spend hours discussing food, and so Rob really does want to make, particularly with white label and our black label, very food-friendly wines. So that's one of the reasons that they've decided to continue on with this style. There's probably in the Yarra, most people are making Gris styles rather than Grigio styles. I think our climate probably just suits it because we have these long autumns like Alsace does. Even though Alsace is really north, it has a really long autumn. So that's why it can ripen things like Riesling and Gris.
Okay. So
that's the sort of style that we're looking for.
Let's move on to the Chardonnay, if we can.
Chardonnay. Yeah. So white label Chardonnay. This is from Willow Lake Vineyard with a tiny dash of Yarra land, which is in Chirnside Park. So that's in the lower Yarra from those very poor grey soils, but most of it is out of Willow Lake. Now, we have a very distinct style of Yarra Valley Chardonnay. This is what this is. It is, I'll explain the winemaking. So we do whole bunch pressing. We handpick the fruit and then we bring it in, we whole bunch press it. And the reason we do that is, unlike the Gris, we don't want any of that phenolic, those little tiny tannins picked up in the juice. We want it to be very, very pure and very, very soft because it has high acidity. We don't want any more of that grippiness because we can add some of that back with oak. So this goes full solids into hogshead. So our barrels are all 300 litres. Full solids means, you know, when you buy apple juice and sometimes it's cloudy and sometimes it's clear. Full solids means that we're fermenting cloudy juice. What does that mean? A, you've got much more of the natural yeast, so the wild yeast in there. And it adds this sort of texture to the wine and a richness to the wine and gives it what we call a reductive note. So that sort of flinty, mineral, whetstone character. So full solids, we're looking for that minerality in the wine. We use hogsheads over barriques because we want a very gentle uptake. So the larger the oak barrel, the less wine that's in contact with it. So the slower the uptake of oak. If you use a 225 litre barrel, you've got more wine in contact with the oak. And so it can suck it up really, really quickly. And we've got to be very careful that we get the balance of oak and fruit just right. When this wine has just been released, you'll notice the oak a lot more because it hasn't all come together. But we're trying the 2018. We've just moved to 19 here. Well, we're about to move to 19. So the oak is a lot more evident. Classic nut characteristics are sort of green apple, melon, what I call unripe or just ripe nectarines. So you don't have that really lush peach and nectarine. It's more just getting there. You can see hints of it. And the other thing that stands out for me, which is part of Willow Lake and the cooler sites of the Yarra Valley, is what I call green almond. You know, raw almonds, like blanched almonds. Yeah. I see that in Chardonnay that comes out of Willow Lake. We only use French oak, about 30% new, and that's again because we want the fruit to hang over the oak. We don't want the oak to obscure the fruit. And then we do lees stirring monthly. So what happens with lees stirring, after about 6 weeks, the yeast cells burst open and they release a number of proteins. And by continuing to suspend them in the solution, you're actually dissolving those proteins in your wine. So you're giving that more creamy texture and slight hints of brioche and nuttiness. So you might see some hazelnut in there as well. This is probably one of my favourite wines in the Rob Dolan stable.
For me, the grapefruit component is playing really strongly tonight in my glass, and I really like that because it has a kind of activism. It's kind of nerviness is the wrong word, but there's definitely some agitation in the citric profile of the wine, and I really love that because it's balancing so beautifully with the oak. It has different stories to tell. I'm really, really enjoying that bit.
Yeah, and I don't know if people can see that sort of minerality. I mean, people often ask me, you know, what is minerality? But think about, I'm sure you haven't sucked on a wet stone, but you know when it's been a really hot day and then it rains on concrete or sort of dusty earth, you get that certain smell. That's what you get, I think, in the flavour of this wine, and that's what we want. Particularly out of Willow Lake Vineyard, we definitely want that lovely minerality because these are wines that age. We opened up the 2010 during lockdown. We were doing some online tastings and we used it as an excuse to get some museum wines out, and they age beautifully. They take on this lovely honey nougat character. So you sort of got honey and the sort of burnt sugar and the nuttiness, and very nice wines.
So aging-wise, thanks to Stilven and just the wonderful acids of this wine, you've got a fair trajectory, Meg.
Yeah.
The cellaring.
I mean, that wine was, you know, well, we've only got 10 years of wines really to go through.
Yeah.
And it still had legs on it. It still had lots of primary fruit. So we knew that it would continue to go on. It sort of had some of that preserved lemon pith characteristic in the nectarine. Yeah. But yeah, you're right, Rob. It's that acidity that says to you, yep, this wine's going to stand up to aging, and also stands up to a range of food. So not just, people tend to think, oh, chicken and fish with Chardonnay, but you could easily, I said this today at work, you could easily have that with a steak.
Yep, agreed.
No problem, because that acid's going to cut through any fat. And my favourite is just any form of pork with Yarra Valley Chardonnay is just beautiful.
Geez, and I'm on a protein shakes day, and you're talking about all this fantastic food.
Sorry.
Maybe.
Well, I'm supposed to be on an alcohol-free day, so maybe you should cut yourself some slack, Rob.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take the cue from you. Let's look at the two Pinots side by side if we can, Meg. So the white label 18 and the signature 17.
Okay. So 2018 white label Pinot, again from Willow Lake Vineyard and another vineyard just up the road, Mandala. We use a clone in the Yarra Valley called MV6, which when it was planted in the 90s, it just gave nothing. You had to work it really hard to get any tannin out of it. And now we joke around that we just stand with the plunger over the open pots and we've got enough tannin extraction. We don't have to do any work. For us, Pinot is getting it ripe in the vineyard for the fruit flavours, but then our management in the winery is all about tannin management. It cannot have dry, raspy tannins. It has got to have those beautiful, silky, soft, velvety tannins. And if it doesn't, for me, it's just dry red. It's not Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
We use some whole berry. What whole berry does is it gives this kirsch confected fruit character to the wine. So almost like, I don't know if you get them, the Australians will know what I'm talking about, raspberry lollies. So that it gives this lovely confected flavour to the wine, but you don't want it all to be about that because then it just tastes like it's, Dr. Pepper or raspberry cordial, but it just gives that slight hint. And with whole bunch, we get some of the tannin from the stems. Now, this can't be done in every year because in cooler years, the stems are still very green. You have to make sure that the stems are what we call lignified, so they're brown. When you see rose stems, when they first come out, they're green, and then as they age, they sort of go brown. We're looking for the stems to go brown, so they'll give some of these riper tannins into the wine without giving really drying tannins. So these go into open pot fermenters, and as I said, they're all plunged down. So during winemaking, you've got to keep the red skins in contact with the fermenting wine because all of the colour is in the skins and all of the tannin is in the skins. And the only way that you can get that out is with heat and alcohol. So you need to keep the fermenting wine in contact with the skins. And one way you can do that is just to push the skins down into the fermenting wine. We do it about twice a day and it's called plunging. It's what we do for Pinot Noir. For bigger reds, we do pump over. So we take the fermenting juice out of the bottom and we splash it over the top and it sort of percolates through the skins, taking colour with it. But with Pinot, it's all punch downs. We even do some French pigeage. So we walk on the grapes, nice, gentle, good for marketing. So the white label is probably, I'd say, our flagship wine. It's got lots of cherry, raspberry, a little bit of that confected spice that you get from the whole bunch. And again, about 30% new oak hogsheads, so 300 litre barrels. Pairings, I mean, everyone sort of says duck, which of course is classic.
Yeah.
With this wine, some people think, oh, it's very light in colour, but we really don't care about colour. As long as our tannins are right, we don't care what colour it is. Pinot can go from everything from almost rosé, which is what we saw in some of the 2020 wines, going up to, almost a light Shiraz colour. But it's unimportant for us. It's really just about making sure that the tannin structure is correct for the fruit weight that we've got and for the oak that we've got in the wine.
I think the money shot is this beautiful freshness and exuberance of the Pinot, but it's all set architecturally with some wonderful tannin. So it's kind of guiding, the wine has gravitas without losing its youthful expression. I think that's a really clever balance, and I can see why this is such a successful brand. So guys, this is the 18 is 95 points from Halliday at 42 Sing a bottle. And I think it's, if one chases points, that's a really high rating for a relatively inexpensive label. So maybe let's have a little sniff at the Mac Daddy.
Yeah, so the Signature Series. So this is a blend of a number of vineyards. It has a base in Willow Lake. With Willow Lake, the way the vineyard's planted, it's sort of on a descending slope, and the fruit from this wine actually came from the top part, so it's got the best exposure. From 2017, which was probably, I think, one of the best vintages we've had since the 90s. It was like a return to the 90s because everything ripened when it should. It was like climate change had never happened. It was cool. We had enough heat, but we had beautiful, cool nights. And the Pinot here is just, again, fairly light in colour. You'll see a little bit more of the stems character in here. So it sort of smells a bit like a tomato leaf character. And that's just because we had beautifully ripe stems in 2017. So you could put a high proportion of whole bunch in there. I think it was about 15%, so it still wasn't huge. Wild ferment, foot stomped, French oak, all the bells and whistles, 40% new oak, aging for about 10 months. And when we do the aging, we go through and we just don't say, oh, it's going to be 10 months and we're set and forget. We go through every month and we taste through and make sure that it's aging as it should. Some barrels will age better than others. They take longer, they take shorter, depending on what forest the oak's from and who made the barrels. There's like myriad options that you've got. But when we've decided that the wine's reached its peak, as it were, we get it out, and that's when the sort of the magic comes in, because we've got everything's made in small batch. So we'll have the Willow Lake top vineyard, we'll have the Willow Lake bottom vineyard, we'll have Gladysdale, some of the Mandala fruit, from Yarra Junction, and it's just apportioning that to produce a wine that you know can taste really good now, but also is going to age. Yeah, that's the hard part, and it's kind of the I don't remember who it was, but they used to refer to the aging in the bottle as alchemy. They thought that it was, it was some sort of magic that was going on. And that's the thing I love about winemaking is you leave it in the bottle and you've got no control and all these great changes happen.
Yeah. What's amazing, again, is this balance. There's this, so Ewan talks about it being solid and brawny, and he's bang on with that. But I can just see how this is going to evolve in 5 to 10, maybe even a little longer, given that it's Stelvin. There's the sleekness, the gloss on the tannins is very impressive. Yep.
And it does need to be a bit grunty because, like I said, it's got to age. So you've got to have that tannin there. So, it's trying to achieve that balance between drinkability now, but also, it's got the form to go long term as well. I love this wine. The thing about this wine, though, is I don't know if you sent out little samples, Trevor, or if
we're all drinking furiously to keep up with you.
Seriously, buy a bottle because it's really better the next day.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good. I'll say
if you've got some left in your glass, leave it until the end of the tasting or an hour and a half and come back and taste it, and it just opens up because Willow Lake is sort of renowned for that violet perfume, and you see a little bit of that now, but give it another hour and that'll start actually coming out. And
I double decanted all the reds. So they've seen a bit of tender loving care earlier this morning. Question from Derek is, how the silkiness of the Pinot tannins, are they a consequence of viticulture or viniculture or both? And how is raspy tannin avoided?
Okay, so first part of the question, Pinot Noir is a thin skin variety, so it doesn't have a lot of tannin in it anyway. Tannin has developed in red berry skins because to detract from birds eating them, because it was considered, the birds think it's quite bitter. They get attracted by the bright red fruit, and then they get in there and they go, bitter tannins. So that's how, biologically it's developed. So Pinot Noir has got less tannin because it has thinner skins. We also can select the clones that we use. And like I said, we use MV6. Some clones have less tannin than others. But again, the more crop you have on the vineyard, the more the vine has to spread its love around. So it can't put as much energy into putting tannin in if you've got, pardon?
So I didn't realise I was on, sorry, I thought I was on.
Oh, no, that's okay.
We're just laughing at the partial wild ferment and foot stomped. So,
Pejage, that's where the wild ferment comes from.
Exactly.
Grant, stop having fun.
It's wine serious, don't you know?
Yeah.
What was this? I can't remember what the second part of the question was now.
Oh, okay. How do you avoid raspy tannin structure in a Pinot?
Okay. Raspberry tannins are what we call astringent tannins, and they are from, you often get them from hot ferment, too much extraction. So we make sure that if we start seeing that, we stop any pump overs. So they kind of, and that you can get some out of the seeds as well. So we avoid any as little seed contact as we possibly can. And at the end of alcoholic fermentation, you can do what's called a post-fermentation maceration to get more tannin out. We don't really do that with Pinot Noir. So that's how you avoid it.
Not to underscore the impact of this Pinot Noir of the Year from Wine State, which is, I don't know if you agree, but probably the most influential wine magazine in the Antipodes. I can't wait to hold this over my Kiwi friends that Rob Dolan Wines took everybody from New Zealand and beat them solidly. It hardly ever happens. So that's a huge recognition for this particular wine. Meg, just personally, how much is Willow Lake of Willow Lake being your super premium source? How much of this particular wine comes from that?
90%.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a tickle from Mandala, and that's basically to fill barrels, because it's made in such small volumes. To get the volume to fill the barrels, you sometimes have to blend other wine in. Yeah.
Really classy. Wow, it's beautiful.
Yeah. We deliberately chose Mandala because it is literally next door to Willow Lake. And yeah, very similar fruit quality. Probably a little bit gruntier than perfumed Mandala.
Yeah.
So the previous Pinot, which vineyard were the grapes mainly from?
Willow Lake as well.
Oh, okay.
But down the bottom of the hill, not at the top.
Was it the gruntiness and the body of that? The second one's unbelievable. Was that because they're higher up? Is there more sun, or is it
more exposure, more sun, so more tannin, more colour?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
And just on the signature series as well, like Meg pointed out, but all handmade. We only make about 180 dozen of this wine, so it's really small allocation. A wine that's going to age for many years, and like Rob said, great accolades behind it. So,
all right, so let's
get in. Yeah.
Let's look at the last two, the very different wines, but something to finish off with: the Cab Shiraz Merlot blend and the signature Cabernet.
So True Colours. This is our 2017 Cab Shiraz Merlot. Cab Shiraz is probably an iconic Australian blend, and one of the reasons we make this is Rob and I, we just love Cabernet from the Yarra Valley, and we know it's not cool, but we don't care. We don't tend to celebrate blends very often in Australia. In fact, I was doing a podcast today, and one of the questions I was asked was, are blends inferior? Are blended wines inferior in quality to normal wines? And you think about the great wines of Bordeaux, they're all blends. So we made this to sort of showcase an easy drinking wine based on Yarra Valley Cabernet, basically. It's just very simple, or not simple, but juicy fruit, a little bit of French oak, but about not a lot of new. So again, we want the structure rather than the oak flavours. And even though we have made a pizza wine for Rob, this I think is the best pizza wine. It's just goes really well with anything kind of Italian and tomatoey and fatty. You've got that lovely Shiraz tannin and mid-palate weight with beautiful dusty Merlot finish.
I'm loving what the Shiraz component gives to this wine. There's this wonderful, authentic sort of rusticism about it, and particularly in the phenolics. There's not smokiness, because obviously smoke is now a bad word in Australian wine, particularly in Victoria. But there's definitely, I'm not very good at interpreting it, but I'm really loving the impact of the Shiraz as part of this blend. I think it's
our Shiraz in the Yarra is quite spicy. I mean, they say white pepper and black pepper. I can't really smell black pepper, but there is that spiciness, and I think you're right. There's a smokiness to the wine, like a smoky barbecue meat sort of smell. And
maybe char siu in Singapore terms, char siu, that sort of char.
Oh, the red pork thing. Yeah,
maybe something like that.
I'm thinking more pulled pork American barbecue, you know, with smoked paprika and
delicious. Dry roast.
Yes, delicious.
The big thing from a sales point of view on this wine is the trophy for the best dry red at the Melbourne International
Wine Show.
I'm not sure who else was in that lineup, but that's very impressive given its price point at $35. That's certainly when I was starting to dig around and do the research for tonight. I was particularly excited to see this because it's pulling down some serious awards for really humble priced bottle of wine.
I mean, we were saying today we were really surprised when we saw that it had won because it was up against some pretty good wines, you know, wines that we sort of thought, should win.
Yeah.
But that show, there's a lot of the high-end sommeliers in there, and I think that its freshness and its purity and its balance, and they're thinking about food. I think that's why it did so well. So it was a very food-friendly wine. I mean, it's not judged with food, but there's a lot of somms tasting those wines, judging in those shows.
And also a charm to it, you know. There's a beautiful finish and a flourish to the back of the wine. In every way, it's been a seriously composed wine at a really reasonable price level. Then to change the gears up a little bit and go to the signature cab, best Cabernet in the Yarra.
Well, I will say that was for the 2016, but I think 17's better.
Yeah. That's the white label. We're looking for the signature, aren't we? No, it's white label, sorry.
The white label. Yeah, the signature series Cabernet just picked up at the Hong Kong
That's right.
Wine Awards, the best
best Cabernet in the world, basically.
Best Cabernet or Cabernet blend.
Yeah, beat out all the best Bordeaux and so on, yeah.
So this wine, the 2016 was named Best Cabernet at the Yarra Valley Wine Show. And I remember the chair of judges, I heard him whisper to a friend, have we got that right? Because it was up against Yeringberg and Yering wines. But, you know, the 2016 was an amazing wine. The 2017, so the signature series off the same vineyards and very similar in style, but just it's a wine that's going to live longer. So this is from Yering Park in Yarraland. Now, Yarraland is basically on exactly the same dirt as Mount Mary. So it's as the crow flies, you'd be in Mount Mary's backyard in about 2 minutes. So they almost abut each other. Probably at one of our best Cabernet sites. With the signature series, we do take some from the Upper Yarra from one of our winemaker's parents' site, but we wanted a warmer style. And the thing about Yarra Valley Cabernet is we are cool, and so we often have that bay leaf, dried woody herb smell, but our fruit profile is all about fresh fruit. So it'll be black currant, blueberry, blackberry, but fresh fruit, not cooked fruit, not jammy fruit. Lovely freshness about it, and I just love it. Licorice goes really well with food. We need longer time in oak, so this has 16 months because the tannins need time to really come together before it can be released, particularly in a year like 17 where it was such perfect conditions. You don't want to rush things. You want to take time.
So Meg, if you to define the difference between 16 and 17 for your Cabernets, how were the two vintages, and how were things different in terms of construct?
16 was the shortest vintage on record. It was very compressed. We had Chardonnay ripening with Shiraz, Shiraz ripening with Cabernet. So the fruit profile for us was very dark berry fruit, so lots of blackberry, and we almost saw not a jamminess, but like a compote character. So when you're starting to make, say, a plum compote, so you've got the vanilla and the fruit. So it was more towards a cooked fruit spectrum, whereas the 2017 long, cool autumn gave us plenty of time to ripen. We didn't have to rush. We had plenty of space in the winery, and you've got these more blue fruits, blackcurrant, blueberry, blackberry fruit, as well as that lovely bay leaf and a little bit of cedar in there as well.
We've got Grant asking the question, is it 100% cab there, Meg?
Yes. Yeah, they both are. Yeah, it's Cabernet can be a bit of a donut wine, so it can have a little bit of a hole in it, and that's the reason we often blend Shiraz, you know, a tickle of Shiraz or Merlot into it. But with 17, it is just so fine-lined and fine-grained.
Yeah, fine-grained is the right definition for it, yeah.
My husband's just giving me crap. I'm married to a winemaker, so it's it's always always the competition.
Is it half-time on the rugby?
I don't know. Is it half-time on the rugby, Pete? No. He makes Italian varieties. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, so 17, just perfect ripening conditions. So we got that. For me in the Yarra, when we start seeing blue fruit, we start seeing blueberry, we know we're just starting to hit ripeness. And that's when you start sort of getting out there every other day, making sure that you pick it at the optimum time. 16, it literally went from sort of just ripe to almost overripe overnight because of the conditions. It was so hot.
Meg, are you going to find with global warming that the validity, or the impact of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in the Yarra is going to be, now, I can see by your expression, the answer is yes.
Yeah, and this is why there's more plantings in the Upper Yarra because it's cooler, and because we've got phylloxera in the Yarra, so there's a lot of replanting going on at the moment. And so rather than see that as a disaster, we're actually seeing it as an opportunity to get our sites and our varieties perfectly matched. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's a joke, you know, anything, we should be planting anything that ends in an O, so Tempranillo and Nebbiolo and Graciano, I don't know. But I mean, the Bordelais are planting Touriga Nacional, Portuguese varieties.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
So I hope it doesn't come to that. I hope we can do something about it. We're just...
Well, I'm told there's quite a gold rush down towards Tassie from the Victorian producers as well. For the same reasons, everyone's desperately trying to snap up land.
Oh, I say, what's the best drinking?
What's that, Grant?
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to type a question.
He keeps put us on mute.
Yes. It's been a long day.
That's your second yellow card, mate.
I know. Okay, I'll read what I was going to type. Is it given that, like, it's got lovely tannins, the acidity, it's all so well structured. How long do you think it could be sold for?
At least 15 years.
Yeah.
But the thing is with cellaring wine, you know, I always say buy a dozen, sort of try it every year. And when it's drinking well, don't wait. We've all made that mistake where we've laid it down to, it's going to get better, and it doesn't. And then you're just left with, you know, a pile of disappointment.
My wife complains about that all the time, by the way. It's a lovely wine. It really is. It's unbelievable. It's really...
The thing is with the Cabernet, it's so uncool. We had some trading the other day from one of, you know, the hippest bars in Melbourne, Emerald Peacock. And we showed them Pinot and Sauvignon and Arnaise, and then we brought out the Cabernet, and they went, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" But we won't be able to sell it. You know.
Meg, to be fair, who else is making a straight cab in the Yarra? I mean,
Yeah.
Obviously the guys up Yarra Yering have all got blends.
Yeah.
Yering Station, Yeringberg is still, it's an 85-15 mix if I remember rightly.
Yeah, Yeringberg's still got some. She put some Cabernet Franc and some Merlot in there as well.
Yeah, fill that middle palate. I've got a question for you. Given I was astounded that the vines go back to 1838. I suppose I shouldn't be, but are there any old vines still left? And you mentioned phylloxera there, so I guess they've probably been wiped out by now. But are there any old vines left in Victoria?
No. In Victoria, there are. In the Yarra Valley, no.
Right.
Yeringberg probably had the oldest vine stock, and with phylloxera, because they're not on rootstock, we have a program where we're taking what we call our heritage material. So Sandra Depury has taken her Marsanne, her Riesling, her Cabernet, and they're putting it onto rootstock, so that we're protecting.
I'm doing that with my hair at the moment.
It's obviously a long-term project, Luke.
Yeah.
Do you get to pick what kind of hair you grow, or?
No, it's a conservation project. I'm seeking federal government grants.
We've got grant programs for that, mate.
I've got Grant Dooley who keeps on interrupting.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, it's me this time. I'm just wondering, Nick, given that this is your white label Cabernet Sauvignon, what would you do differently to take it up to the next level?
So what we did, we've got a signature series from the same year, and what that was basically bunch selection. So from the best vineyards, a lot of it's from Michael Vineyard up in Seville. So we, select out the best bunches, select out the best berries, and then the best barrels. So you just sort of take it, you're whittling down so that you've got the absolute best of the best.
So there's another level to go on top of this one.
Yeah, we've actually got it on the site, Chris. So if you
not for much longer, Rob.
We've still got a few dozen of the signature cab, so which we didn't see tonight.
Yeah, it's astounding. Yeah, it is. It's a great one.
If it was blended with something, with anything else, is that it's so well structured. It just, to me, for 100% cab, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I've got to say, it's testimony to these two vineyards. Even though Cabernet's not cool, these guys actually really invest in their Cabernet. They want to make sure that they make really great Cabernet, so they take the time to make sure the vineyard's perfect. They drop the yields. They, harvest at the right time. There's no sort of sun damage on the grapes or any bird damage. They're very, very careful.
Thanks.
Any more questions before we say goodnight to Australia? Nothing else from anybody? Well,
we want to be there.
We miss home.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh.
It won't
Are you allowed to come home? Or you're all working there, so?
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Not at the moment. So we'll just keep drinking your wine. It will remind us of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much, guys. I appreciate Gareth.
Thank you very much.
Efforts, and Meg. Hope we get to taste again with you sometime soon.
And when you get back, come and visit us. We have a guy that makes cheese on site. We have a cheese maker on site.
We're actually from Melbourne, so we have a house in Benares. So we'll.
That is perfect. Half an hour, well, maybe 40 minutes. But yeah, come and have some Stone and Crow cheeses, and I'll sit down and have a glass of sparkling and welcome you back to Melbourne.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Cool.